Dear friends, welcome to this new video in the series The Apocalypse in Art. Today I would like to present a contemporary work on the Apocalypse, the monumental painting of the Apocalypse by François Peltier, located in the cloister of the Collegiate Church of Saint-Émilion in France. For those of you who are unfamiliar with southwestern France, Saint-Emilion is a village near Bordeaux, famous for its renowned vineyards. The origin of this work lies in the desire of Father Émeric de Rozières, parish priest of Saint-Emilion at the time, to place a work of Sacred Heart in the cloister of the Collegiate Church of Saint-Émilion. After visiting the Way of the Cross at the Church of Notre-Dame de Bias, Father de Rozières decided to approach its creator, the painter François Peltier, and commissioned him to paint a large painting of the Apocalypse. He himself gave two reasons for choosing the Apocalypse. Firstly, contrary to the widespread opinion, the Apocalypse is the book of hope, with which I wholeheartedly agree. The other reason for choosing the Apocalypse is the fact that it is a book full of images, which lends itself particularly well to pictorial representation. The first stage took the form of a sketch consisting of individual paintings, which was exhibited from 2015 to 2018. But according to François Peltier himself, this sketch was deemed insufficient, satisfying neither him nor Father de Rozières. Then it was decided that François Peltier would immerse himself in the text of the Apocalypse, with which he was unfamiliar at the time, and devote himself to the project of creating a comprehensive work on the Apocalypse. And so Peltier immersed himself in the reading of the Apocalypse for several months and then set to work. The final result, on a completely different scale, was completed in 2018 and exhibited in the cloister of the Collegiate Church, which was empty at the time. A video linked to this page traces the genesis of the work in its various stages. This new painting of the Apocalypse, located on the west side of the cloister of the Collegiate Church of Saint-Emilion, is a monumental work, measuring 38 meters long and 5 meters high. Here is an overview. The work is painted on different types of wood, according to carefully concealed symbolism: Lebanese cedar, oak, chestnut, lime, and poplar. In total, around 30 people collaborated on this work. The work was inaugurated on December 16, 2018, in the presence of Archbishop Ricard of Bordeaux and Bishop Herbreteau of Agen, the diocese of residence of François Peltier. The work extends between the two doors of the cloister of the Collegiate Church. It includes a prologue above the first door, the heavenly Jerusalem above the second door, and 3 sections between the two. In the center, the vision of Christ, with evil on the left side and good on the right side. The whole is therefore conceived as a pictorial representation of a vast conflict between good and evil. We will now look at the work in detail, and of course you can pause this video at any time if you wish to focus on a specific detail. First, the prologue. At the bottom left appears the text of the first verses of Revelation, the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants what must soon take place. He made it known by sending his angel to his servant John. At the bottom right is the island of Patmos, where John received the revelation of the Apocalypse. Higher up on the left-hand side, we see St. John with a pen in his hand. Note that his hand is turned over. This corresponds to the text of the Apocalypse. I turned to see the voice that spoke to me, says John. This turning marks the need to turn to the Lord and therefore to convert. Only once he has turned or converted can John see Christ. Around Christ's face, pointing downwards, are 7 lampstands. At the level of John's head, we see a white golden band representing the golden belt worn by Christ. Christ's hair is deliberately curled to reflect the curls of the lamb's fleece. A sharp sword emerges from Christ's mouth, symbolizing the power of the Word of God. Around Christ's head, we see a golden halo to suggest a face that shines like the sun. 7 churches are depicted at the top around the upper part of Christ's head. These are the following churches. At the top left, the Basilica of St. John of Ephesus, as archaeology has been able to reconstruct it, since only ruins remain today. The Church of Saint-Émilion, where the work is exhibited. St. Andrew's Cathedral in Bordeaux, since Saint-Emilion is located in the Archdiocese of Bordeaux. Above it, the Cathedral of Saint-Caprais in Agen, the Diocese of François Peltier. The Church of Bias, François Peltier's place of residence. Above St. John, the Basilica of St. John Lateran, Cathedral of the Bishop of Rome, the Pope. At the bottom left, the Primatial Church of St. John in Lyon. Indeed, St. Irenaeus, Bishop of Lyon at the end of the 2nd century, knew St. Polycarp, who himself knew St. John. We now move to the center of the work with the vision of God, with the contemplative Trinity, according to François Peltier's expression. In the center is Christ carrying the book with 7 seals. Above Christ's face is a large circle with a red dot in the center, surrounded by white light that ends in emerald green, symbolizing God the Father. François Peltier said that he had no desire to represent the Father as an old man or as an I. He chose to stick to the text of Revelation. Behold, a throne was in heaven, and above the throne sat one, the one who sits as the appearance of jasper or carnelian. There is a halo of light around the throne with emerald reflections. We also see inside the circle the Son of God, represented as a lamb and 7 flames of fire, which are the 7 spirits of God, symbolizing the Holy Spirit in His fullness. Below the circle, Christ appears inside a door, for He said, I am the door. A sharp sword comes out of His mouth. He holds the sealed book that He took from the Father's hand. Around the circle of the Trinity, we see the 4 living creatures, the lion, the bull, the Son of Man, and the eagle, and also the 24 elders, whom François Peltier interprets as representing the 4 evangelists and the 24 books of the Bible, respectively. Above the circle is the rainbow. Towards the bottom, we see the 7 churches of Asia. Each of the 7 churches is represented by its reward in the event of conversion. The center of the panel is constructed in the form of a radiant cross. The vertical beam of the cross is the trunk of the tree of life where the churches are placed. Below, the Beatitudes are depicted on a green background, as the Apocalypse is a text of hope. To the right of Christ are the column and key of David. On either side of the vision of God are 2 representations of the woman. The woman in the Apocalypse is both the Virgin Mary, mother of Jesus, and the church. On the side of evil, on the left, she is pregnant and hated by evil. Her sex is an open door inscribed with the fish of Christianity. She gives birth to the church. The woman has wings which allow her to escape the dragon and give birth to a son who carries the iron scepter and whom we find on the side of good, and the iron scepter in the battle of Armageddon. The woman presents the child but does not hold him because he is God. Now we turn to the left with the representation of evil. Here is an overview. Between the prologue and the contemplative Trinity, we have the triad of evil, the dragon, the beast from the sea, and the beast from the earth. Let us move from left to right. First, we have the dragon. François Peltier did not depict the entire dragon because, he said, it looked too much like a comic book or some kind of heroic fantasy. Instead, we see 2 of the dragon's heads. They are skulls. Other heads are depicted elsewhere. Below the dragon, we see the beast from the sea, depicted in yellow, with 7 heads and 10 horns. Notice that some horns are not on anything. They are loosed. One of the heads is slain in accordance with what is said in Revelation chapter 13. To the right of the beast from the sea, men bow down before it. Who is like the beast, say the inhabitants of the earth in Revelation. The beast of the earth is depicted to the right of the dragon and above the beast from the sea. It wears a lamb's mask because, according to Revelation, it looks like a lamb, even though it speaks like a dragon. In the background, behind the beast, are printed circuits symbolizing virtual images. I quote François Peltier, "The fact that the false prophet can make an image of the beast of the sea speak. That is, the spirit of evil can animate a virtual image as if it were reality. And this leads us to reflect on our times. That is why I painted a motherboard with microchips in front of the false prophet. Because our current world of smartphones, images, computers, and social networks has become more virtual than ever before, far removed from human realities. And this causes the heads of the beast of the sea to appear superimposed. From this appearance of the image of the beast of the sea, banknotes and coins fall." End of quote. The upper part is populated by angels with trumpets, light and brightness, gold and white. In addition, the angel's wings and the ladder descend low into the path of evil, and everyone can use it to climb up to escape evil, because redemption is always possible for man. Continuing to the right, we see the great prostitute. She has no face. Only her sexual attributes are visible. She holds a cup containing silver. It resembles a chalice, but it contains the silver of prostitution. In her scarlet robe coat, we can see Babylon, fire, evil, a skull, and the 7 heads and 10 horns of the beast. The ladder shows again that redemption is always possible. Babylon falls, and birds hover above. Then we see the 7 kings of the earth. For Peltier, these are earthly powers that prevent men from rising up. He made a personal choice to update these symbols as follows: speculation, navel gazing and the society of spectacle, show business, contempt for nature with a single green leaf, the rest being black, the desire to retreat into the brain and turn us into numbers, fragmentation with a watch, mechanization that prevents the true timing of things, virtuality. Peltier talks about the digital and virtual world that disconnects us from real life. Then we see the fall of Babylon. The city is on fire. People are fleeing, and some are clinging to the wings of angels. We see the well of the abyss. This is a shape that appears to be a single-track labyrinth, burned and metallic to emphasize its infernal nature. It's a labyrinth that is blocked and from which there is no escape, because evil is a dead end. Locusts emerge from the pit, represented as chariots. At their head is Abaddon, and at the bottom of this scene we see another of the dragon's heads. Then the 4 angels of Euphrates are associated with evil. Peltier considers that exegetes are unsure how to interpret them. He depicts them as 4 balls of light bound in the green river. Below the angels are the horses of the 6th trumpet. Next, we have the plagues. Peltier chose to represent them in a reduced size of 40 centimeters. On the one hand, he thought that it was good to avoid weighing down the trials of the apocalypse in order to leave space for the clarity of hope. On the other hand, he thought that it was more interesting to try to analyze the principle of evil rather than dwell on the result of its action. So we see a scorched, empty desert, or just Satan's black sun. The beast from the sea, where the cup pours the liquid into the wound and below. What remains is the desert with the triad of vomiting frogs. Above it are 3 golden tongues descending from heaven, to which men can cling to escape. Next is the camp of the saints in the form of the golden circle in the middle of the scorched desert. The circle is inscribed in a cross. for it is to be feared that the last faithful will live through a difficult period on earth. Now we turn to the right side of the work. Goodness. Here is an overview. And now we move from right to left towards the central panel. At the back on the right, we see the Lamb standing on Mount Zion, Revelation chapter 14. Below the Lamb, we see a group of men. They are advancing for judgment. To the right, we see a group of men dressed in white. These are those who have washed their robes in the blood of the Lamb. They wear golden crowns and are advancing towards the gate to enter the heavenly Jerusalem. Below, however, we see a red rectangle representing the lake of fire into which those who are condemned fall. Now we see the harvest and the vintage. Below the Lamb, we see ears of wheat and bunches of grapes. It is the scene of the harvest and the vintage mentioned in Revelation 14. To the left, we see the angel, the mighty angel of Revelation chapter 10. François Peltier considers that this angel is not Christ, but possesses many of his characteristics. His feet are like pillars of fire. With his right hand he swears and points to the only golden band that extends to the beige part. He holds the little book and says, "There will be no more time," which Peltier has written on his purple robe. To his left are the two witnesses of Revelation chapter 11. I will give my two witnesses the power to prophesy, clothed in sackcloth for 1,260 days. These are the two olive trees and the two candlesticks that stand before the Lamb, the Lord of the earth. If anyone wants to harm them, fire comes out of their mouth and devours their enemies. Peltier interprets the two witnesses as symbolizing the two testaments. The New Testament on the left is larger, younger, and more hairy than the Old Testament on the right. But the two have only one body. The Old Testament carries the light, and the New Testament carries the olive tree. Behind the Old Testament, Peltier wrote the beginning of Genesis, and behind the New Testament, the prologue to the Gospel of John, both of which begin with the same words, "in the beginning." Now we turn to the four horsemen. Orthodox Christians believe that the four horsemen are negative symbols. However, many Catholic interpreters believe that the white horseman is a positive symbol. Peltier placed the four horsemen on the sign of good. For Peltier, the white horse is Christ-like. In the Apocalypse, the crown and the white collar are reserved for Christ and the divine. Furthermore, he is victorious and without restriction, which is an attribute of Christ. He announces, and for this reason he is larger and painted above, the arrival of the other three horses. We have war and discord, the red horse, famine, the black horse, and death, the pale horse. For Peltier, these are signs announcing the need for a profound conversion of mankind. Then we turn to Armageddon. For Peltier, Armageddon is the site of the great battle between good and evil, from the moment Christ intervenes. An angel with a golden censer blesses the scene. The censer is at the center of the composition, and its smoke rises diagonally towards God, represented as in the Trinity and as St. John describes in Revelation chapter 8. Another angel came with a golden censer. He was given much incense to offer with the prayers of all the saints before the throne. And the smoke of the incense rose with the prayers of the saints from the angel's hand before God. Christ on his white horse attacks evil. He is painted as is described in Revelation 19. A flame of fire comes out of his eyes and a sword from his mouth. He wears a crown. He also wears a red cloak, symbolizing the blood of battle, on which is written Lord of Lords, and also a white tunic symbolizing purity, on which is written King of Kings. Notice that his tunic is torn into two flying pieces to evoke the host broken by the priest in the celebration of the Eucharist. Indeed, it is the supreme sacrifice of the Lamb. Christ carries the iron scepter carried by the child in the vision of Revelation chapter 12. The birds we saw flying around the great prostitute earlier are now more visible and are preparing to devour the flesh of the vanquished. Below Christ's horse with the red turban is Saint Michael. Peltier has given him a manly appearance and a red cap, reminiscent of Christ's blood-red cloak. Below comes the army of Christ's angels on their white horses. Peltier depicts their faces with one eye facing forward and one in profile to express that the angel's vision is different. Next comes the army of angels on foot, and below the black sun is covered by the yellow wings and robes of the angels. At the top, the small white dots represent the souls, numbering 144,000. Thanks to Christ's sacrificial struggle, the souls can gather here in a spiral and ascend to God. Now we turn to the woman. The woman of the Apocalypse is at once the Virgin Mary, the Church, and Christianity. She is the fertilized principle, the one who gives life. Physical life, but even more so, spiritual life. The lamb that was slain is the bridegroom, the one who fertilizes. He is alive, his eyes open, but slain, and his blood is flowing. Below, a metal grid and red square represent the millennium. Peltier interprets it in the manner of St. Augustine as a time during which we can fight the spirit of evil without being able to destroy its essence. It is the time of the church. And to the left of the square of the millennium, we see the lake of fire. And here at last is the pure whiteness of God. At the bottom of this last panel is the seventh and last head of the dragon. It is smashed and sinks amid the black flames in the lake of sulfur. From its crushed skull escape men who are finally freed. They walk towards the vision of God and enter the circle of light that gradually covers and raises everything to shine brightly. The light is pure and develops into a perfect circle of the apocalypse. We can see great crowned souls and many small souls, the little white dots, coming from everywhere and gathering on the left side of the image, that is, as close as possible to the vision of God. We now turn to the heavenly Jerusalem. Above the door at the back of the cloister, we see the heavenly Jerusalem with the active or economic Trinity. The heavenly Jerusalem is painted in jasper, red in color, with 12 gates of pearl, and in the middle, a square place of pure gold, where the tree of life, engraved in gold, grows, and the walls are painted flat, as in mozarabic illuminations. God is represented as a jasper point surrounded by the halo of blinding light. Below the red dot is the sacrificed lamb and a river of water representing the Holy Spirit. It flows above and below because the Spirit proceeds from the Father and from the Son. On both sides, the foundations of the heavenly Jerusalem are 12 precious stones. To the left of the gate, 2 beatitudes are written inside green circles, including this one: "Blessed are those who wash their robes, that they may have right to the tree of life, and may enter in through the gates into the city." Above the Apocalypse is the last book of the Bible. Peltier wanted to place the first book of the Bible above it, that is, the book of Genesis. The fabrics at the top, made of Indian ink and pigments on canvas, represent from the outside towards the center the 6 days of creation up to human beings, with closest to God. On the uprights are 2 recurring symbols: the ear of wheat and the bunch of grapes, that is, bread and wine. Attached to the visible structure of the protruding animals, which resemble gargoyles, are symbols of Christ. These symbols are borrowed from the Bestiary of Christ, a book that lists all the animal figures used to represent Christ. For example, the phoenix, because Christ dies and is reborn; the rooster, because it was reputed to make the sun rise, etc. Their density increases as one approaches the center, and thus the vision of God. Now I'd like to say a few words about the technique used by François Peltier. The work was done in oil paint using glazing, following the technique of the Flemish primitives. Peltier explains that, to simplify things, there are 3 ways to paint. First, the Italian method, known as alla prima, where blue and yellow are mixed to obtain green. Second, the Impressionist method, where the juxtaposition of a small touch of blue next to a small touch of yellow causes the eye and brain to recreate a green color. And third, the Flemish technique, which is somewhat similar to stained glass, where a semi-opaque blue is painted on a white background, left to dry, and then a transparent yellow is applied. The light passing through the layers of paint and bouncing off the white background returns to the eye. This technique gives a depth, power, subtlety, and precision of color that the other two techniques do not possess. It is this technique that has been used here in this piece of art, which means that no thickness of material is perceptible. The Flemish technique is also similar in spirit to medieval techniques in that there is no mixing of colors, but rather a superimposition of colors. The use of wood meets specific criteria. 5 types of wood are used: oak, chestnut, poplar, lime, and cedar. In the unfolding of evil, the wood begins with horizontal lines, but as evil spreads, the wood becomes chaotic, tangled, disordered. Then, when evil thinks it has won and destroyed everything, the wood becomes horizontal again. Good, on the other hand, whether it is above evil, like the angels with trumpets, or in the path of good, is always vertical. Even if we don't notice it, it is imprinted on the retina, and even unconsciously helps us to understand the Apocalypse in depth. The part representing evil is rigid and closed, while the top part representing good remains open and irregular. The colors of evil are dull, gray and bluish or scarlet, and the design is breathless and tangled. The colors of good are warmer and brighter. The design is more airy, except for Armageddon, and the structure is more constructed and serene. François Peltier wants to express that evil is closed, but mixed, swirling and dark, and that good is open, clear, and structured. Dear friends, on the presentation page for this video on the Apocalyptissimo channel, you will find several links. First, a link to the website apocalypsesaint-emilion.com, where you will find practical information. Then links to several videos, all of them in French, a presentation of the prologue to the Apocalypse of Saint-Émilion by Father Émeric de Rozières for the Sud Ouest newspaper. An interview with Father de Rozières for the Sud Ouest newspaper, yes. Then a long video on the Apocalypse of Saint-Émilion presented by François Peltier himself. A video on this piece of art for the Sunday television program, Le Jour du Seigneur, the Day of the Lord. So if you are passing through the Bordeaux region, don't miss this beautiful contemporary painting on the Apocalypse. I see you soon for more videos in the Apocalypse in Art series.